Sarah Martinez had built her empire one contract at a time, turning her small cleaning service into the largest commercial maintenance company on the West Coast. But as she stood frozen in the doorway of her corporate kitchen at 11:47 p.m., watching her night janitor transform plastic buckets into a symphony for her deaf twin daughters, she realized she had never truly understood the meaning of wealth. The day had started like any other grueling Thursday. Board meetings, budget reviews, and the endless pressure of keeping 1,200 employees paid and productive. Sarah lived for these challenges: the adrenaline of closing deals, the satisfaction of quarterly growth, the respect that came with being the youngest female CEO in her industry. What she didn't live for was the guilt that gnawed at her every time she tucked her 8-year-old twins, Emma and Sophie, into bed another hour past their bedtime. "Mommy has to work late again," had become her most repeated phrase, delivered with increasingly hollow promises of weekend adventures that rarely materialized. Tonight was supposed to be different. She'd planned to surprise the girls by picking them up from their after-school program herself, maybe grab ice cream, actually sit through their elaborate sign language stories about playground adventures. Instead, here she was at nearly midnight, retrieving the presentation she'd forgotten, while her daughters slept at her mother's house 40 minutes away. The executive floor was tomb quiet, lit only by emergency lighting that cast long shadows across the mahogany conference table where she'd spent 14 hours today. Sarah's heels echoed hollowly as she made her way to the elevator, presentation tucked under her arm, when she heard something impossible: laughter. Not just any laughter, but the distinctive, unguarded giggles of children who had forgotten the world existed beyond their joy. Following the sound, she discovered the service elevator was propped open, warm light spilling from the employee break room. The laughter grew louder, accompanied by a rhythmic tapping that seemed oddly musical. Sarah approached cautiously, her business instincts warning her about liability issues and after-hours policies, but curiosity winning over protocol. What she saw through the crack in the door stopped her heart. Miguel Santos, the quiet night janitor who'd worked her building for 3 years, sat cross-legged on the linoleum floor, surrounded by an array of different-sized buckets, metal pots, and plastic containers. But he wasn't alone. 2 small figures sat across from him, mirror images of concentration and delight, their hands moving in fluid gestures while Miguel's weathered fingers danced across his makeshift drum set with surprising grace. Sarah's breath caught. The children were deaf. She could tell by their hand movements, the way they communicated through touch and vibration rather than sound. Miguel was playing rhythms they could feel through the floor, watching their faces light up as they felt each beat resonate through their bodies. One girl, probably around Emma and Sophie's age, had her small hands pressed against the largest bucket, her eyes closed in concentration. The other was signing rapidly to Miguel, who was nodding and signing back with remarkable fluency. How did her night janitor know sign language? In 3 years of passing him in hallways, she'd exchanged maybe 20 words with the man who cleaned her office every evening, left fresh flowers on her desk every Monday, and somehow always knew to stock her preferred herbal tea in the break room cabinet. Miguel began a new rhythm, complex, layered, building from a whisper to a crescendo that made the children bounce with excitement. The girl with her hands on the bucket was conducting now, her movements growing bolder as she guided Miguel through tempo changes. Her sister was laughing, the pure sound Sarah remembered from her own daughter's younger days, before schedules and obligations began stealing moments. Sarah leaned closer, and her movement must have caught Miguel's peripheral vision. His hands stilled instantly, his expression shifting from joy to mortification as he realized he'd been discovered. "Mrs. Martinez, I'm so sorry, these are my granddaughters, Maria and Carmen. Their mother had to work late, and I couldn't find anyone to. I know I shouldn't have them here, I'll get them out right away." The words tumbled out in accented English, his hands already moving to pack up his improvised instruments. The girls watched their grandfather's face change, their own expressions shifting from happiness to confusion to the careful blankness children wear when adults are about to ruin something beautiful. "Wait," Sarah found herself saying, stepping fully into the room. "Don't stop on my account." Miguel froze, a dented pot halfway to the supply cart. "Ma'am, I can explain. You know sign language." It wasn't a question. Sarah was watching his hands, noting the easy way he'd been communicating, the natural fluency that spoke of years of practice. "My daughter, their mother, She was born deaf. I learned when she was small. His voice carried the weight of a man who'd spent decades advocating for a child in a hearing world. These two, they love music, but they experience it different. Through vibration, through rhythm they can feel. Sarah knelt down to the children's level, her designer suit somehow feeling ridiculous against the humble linoleum. She signed slowly, rustily, drawing on the ASL classes she'd taken years ago when she first suspected Emma might have hearing issues. The tests had come back normal, but she'd never finished the course, too busy building her empire. "Hello," she signed to the girls. "I'm Sarah." That was beautiful music. Maria, the bolder of the two, signed back rapidly. Miguel translated softly. "She asks if you want to learn their favorite song." For the first time in months, Sarah felt something crack inside her chest, a barrier she'd built between the CEO who conquered boardrooms and the mother who barely knew her children's favorite colors anymore. "I would love that." What happened next transformed everything Sarah thought she knew about success. Miguel taught her the rhythm, patient and encouraging as she fumbled with the timing. The girls guided her hands, showing her how to feel the music through the bucket's surface, how to let the vibrations travel up through her arms to her heart. They created something together. Not a perfect symphony, but something real, something that connected four strangers across language and position and circumstance. Time dissolved. Sarah found herself sitting on that break room floor for 2 hours, learning not just rhythms but stories. Miguel told her about his daughter, a brilliant teacher who'd fought for inclusion in schools across the district. About Maria's love for butterflies and Carmen's dream of becoming a veterinarian. About the struggles of a single mother working 3 jobs to support her family and her father who took night shifts to help raise the girls. "They remind me why I work so hard," Miguel said quietly, watching his granddaughters pack up the makeshift instruments. "Not just for money, but to show them that work has dignity, that taking care of things, buildings, people, dreams, it matters." Sarah thought of Emma and Sophie, asleep in their grandmother's guest room, and realized she'd lost sight of her own why somewhere between profit margins and productivity reports. The next morning, Sarah called an emergency board meeting. She announced a new company initiative: flexible scheduling for parents, on-site childcare for evening shift workers, and full ASL interpretation services for any employee who needed them. She promoted Miguel to head of facility services and asked him to consult on making their buildings more accessible. But the real change happened at 3:30 that afternoon, when Sarah left the office to pick up Emma and Sophie from school. As they walked to the car, hands full of art projects and heads full of playground stories, Sarah realized that Miguel had taught her the most important rhythm of all, the one that prioritized presence over productivity, connection over conquest. Sometimes the most profound lessons come not from boardrooms or business schools, but from a janitor with buckets and a grandfather's love, showing us that true success isn't measured in dollars earned, but in moments shared and hearts opened.